Well, you'll see that tonight's promoted event is known as Cosmic Colours, and I've chosen to wear grey in celebration of that fact. But let's begin. Hare Krishna, Namaste, welcome, hello to all of you. This is number 18 in our series of talks in the Vaishnava Catechism series, and it's known as Cosmic Colours, or the Gunas, the modes of nature. Thank you very much. What is a mode of nature? Have you ever wondered? What is a guna? Is a mode of nature something that you can put in a bucket? What colour is it? Is it green or is it blue? Are there actually colours in the cosmos? Does the universe actually contain swirling colours melting into each other and creating different things? Well, no. These are poetic examples that help us to understand. A mode is an intrinsic nature of something. In Sanskrit, it's the lakshana of something, the characteristic. It's the way it behaves. A mode is an English word, of course. It means the characteristic, the behavior, the influence, the nature. Whereas the word guna conveys the way that a mode of nature behaves upon us. Guna means a strand. When the strands are twisted into a rope, and it makes for something which is very much binding. So Vedic philosophy is not just abstract, but it's practical. It's meant for you to act upon, meant for you to do something with it. And ultimately Vedic philosophy points towards freedom, or gaining liberation from these gunas, or strands of material nature, matter, how matter works. Matter works upon the soul to condition us, pull us down, make us look at the world in a particular way. We are called upon by Vedic philosophy, by Vedanta, by yoga, by Ayurveda, everything, to move through the progressive modes of nature, through the gunas, and to set ourselves free. Just getting my notes. I also have notes, which of course I do share with you every time. Those of you who've been getting my notes, do you actually read them? I wonder. So here we go. Thank you all for coming in. Oh look, got Sakiras, that's a great pleasure. So, Vedic philosophy, you'll find Vedanta, you find Sankhya, which is all about counting things, breaking down nature and levels of consciousness into numbers which can be listed, and freedom can be gained by working with those numbers or working with those hierarchies. So sometimes the Sanskrit word guna is translated as quality, and it means not just a solid object or a liquid object or a gaseous object, but the way that element of nature behaves and the way it has an effect upon the consciousness of the living being. And we've been doing two things in the past few weeks. One is we've been talking about creation. How creation gives rise to the Mahat Tattva, the great Prakriti, another word, and how Prakriti manifests in different forms. In the last couple of sessions we've been talking about the individual jiva, and how the jiva becomes bound up by those gunas or modes of nature. And very shortly we'll be talking about yoga, how to break free from them. So they're not just abstract concepts. They're living dynamics, you could say, through which consciousness experiences embodiment, which is what we're going through, and through which creation itself comes into manifestation. Every thought, every emotion that we have, every environment that we find ourselves in, every action that we take, even every species of life that you see is governed by a mixture of the three modes. So what are the three gunas? Well, you've heard of them before. And in fact, three gunas is a simplistic way of dividing them. But there's a continuum of gunas, because three are the principal labels, three principal behaviors that, or attributes or influences that the gunas have on us. But in between those three, there's 3 and 3 and 3 becomes 27, and 3 becomes, you multiply them until they become 8,400,000, etc. levels of consciousness or levels of influence. So sattva, what Prabhupada translates as goodness, means will push the jiva. Let's talk about it in our terms. Sattva will push the jiva towards clarity, towards harmony, towards illumination. In other words, light will shine on a subject and the darkness will decrease. And towards balance, harmony and balance. So this is sattva pushing us in that direction. Rajas, or passion, pushes us towards activity, but also creativity. The desire to manifest things in the world, travel, creation, passion. And tamas, or ignorance, will pull us in another direction, towards inertia. Inertia, we become inert with the influence of tamas, or ignorance. The illumination becomes darkness. We go from light to heavy, and obscuration, things become occluded or covered over. So everything within the material world contains these three in varying proportions, and it's the varying proportions that give us the different colors and forms and species and levels of consciousness and clans and shoals and tribes and nations. These all have a mixture of the modes of material nature. It's constantly shifting. So none of us is who are embodied are completely sattvic, completely in rajas, or completely in tamas. But it changes, constantly shifting, interplay. So I talked about cosmic colors, and this is an old example that Prabhupada used. If you imagine three primary colors, blue, red and yellow, they can be mixed in many different ways to get green or aquamarine or teal or any of the different colors. Ultimately grey, of course. You mix all the colors too much. And this produces endless varieties of Maya. Maya, in this sense, is the Shakti, or the not so much the illusion of magic, but just the field of exploitation. So goodness can become tinged with passion. That becomes passionate goodness, and that will produce another level of consciousness. Passion can be deepened by ignorance, and this way the three modes, like three colors, they swirl and perform increasingly complex combinations. And ultimately, of course, we have that number, the 8,400,000 gradations of occluded consciousness. What does it mean? Well, in previous weeks we've talked about the Brahman realization, we've talked about also Paramatma and Bhagavan, but we've talked about Brahman realization as being the thing that most religions, most mystics, most philosophers talk about. It's the field where one begins to understand one's eternity the blissful nature of being free from fear of death, the ecstasy of which the soul is made. It's not the end goal, but it's the beginning goal. And Prabhupada pointed to different members of different religions who had all tapped into the same universal consciousness. And in contrast to that, the modes of nature pull one down from that and establish us on a different level. Our ability to perceive reality becomes restricted according to the modal covering that's acting upon us, imposed by nature. So our vision, our hearing, our instinct, our intellect, even our emotional sensitivity becomes worn down, and of course our spiritual awareness. So in Sankhya philosophy, Sankhya of course means to enumerate or to give numbers to number and list. This is Sankhya. And Sankhya philosophy has a lot to say about how in the beginning was the heaven and earth, or in the beginning was Purusha and Prakriti, and within Prakriti there began swirling, and the swirling produced different manifestations within creation, when the equilibrium is disturbed in the presence of the Purusha. So Sattva illuminates, and then Raja energizes, and Tamas stabilizes and condenses. But the universe evolves from subtle and potential into gross material reality. I'll send you the notes. But at one point, the ahamkara, aham means I and kara means maker, the I maker, the ego, becomes manifest. And from ego in different modes comes different, what is known as tanmatras. Tanmatras. And these are the subtle energies which correspond to the different senses. And sattva produces the mind and the senses of perception and the capacity for action. So Sankhya traditionally lists senses of perception, 5 senses, capacities for action. Karmendriyas, the working senses, Prabhupada translates that as. There's a lot about that. But the interesting thing is that if I read this to you, this is very interesting. So, amongst the most profound ideas in Sankhya philosophy and the cosmology which is explained by Sankhya is Tanmatra. Tanmatra means the thatness of something, or the subtle essence. And they're not yet physical substances, but the archetypal sensory potentials underlying all material experience. Let's just list, as Shankar does. Shabda, or sound. Sparsha, or touch. Rupa, form or visibility. Rasa, taste. And Gandha, smell. These are the potentialities. And from these subtle essences emerge the 5 great material elements which are known as Mahabhutas. This bit will be open in a minute. I know this is quite trying because you're listening and not looking. If I had a chart, it would be better. So from sound, the gross element is Akash, or ether. From touch comes Vayu, or air. From form comes fire, Agni, or Tejas. From taste comes water, or Apas. And smell gives rise to Prithvi, or earth. Pretty fundamental stuff. In fact, I was conducting a wedding, as I have done hundreds of times in the past. But this was in the valleys of Wales, and someone was playing the harp, and I was explaining that Sanskrit is a very ancient language, and our wedding today will be conducted in Sanskrit. But it's also, I said, one of the big sisters, or the mother tongue of Welsh. And this word Prithvi means Mother Earth in Sanskrit. I said, and from that we get the word for the earth in Welsh, which is Prith. And so got a round of applause. I said, as we join this couple together, one from the Sanskrit tribe and one from the Welsh tribe. People seem to like that. So this cosmology, I want you to treat this seriously. I'll send you the notes. But you can look at that, and it's very, very interesting. But that's the macrocosm. The microcosm is also very interesting. That's how the Gunas work within the individual. So the same cosmic forces that shape galaxies and all elements also shape our mind. I'm pointing to my head. Mind is somewhere else apart from the head. That's the brain that I'm pointing to. So every thought that we have, every mood, desire, and our behavioral tendencies reflects the predominance of one or more modes. So we go from the galactic, cosmic, the universal, to the micro universe within us. Here comes some ideas, and you'll know which influences you. And they move at different times of day also. The early morning is very much sattva dominated. The time that we work is very much passion dominated. And sleep is, of course, entertainment, ignorant entertainment, and sleep is dominated by tama. You need tamaguna, of course you need to sleep. But too much, and you can become too much of anything, too much of any mode. Even the mode of goodness, you can become conditioned to happiness. We're trying to ultimately use the practices of yoga to break free from all the modes. So sattva, mode of goodness, is associated with light, wisdom, peace, equilibrium, and truth. So the emotional response to sattva would be calmness, compassion. Does this sound like you? I'm sure at times you manifest these qualities. Honesty, purity, self-control, contentment, spiritual awareness, and mental clarity. If that sounds like you, go to the top of the class. So a sattvic mind reflects reality accurately. You're seeing what's there, as Prabhupada used to like to say, as it is. You're seeing things as they are. The more the other modes affect you, you're seeing not what there is, but you're seeing what you are. And sattva produces happiness rooted in understanding rather than happiness rooted in sensory stimulation. So examples of sattvic influence include things like when you do something for no other reason than the happiness of the other person, the relief of the other person, the well-being of the other person. That selfless action is performed in sattva guna. Meditation is performed in sattva guna. You're not dealing with the mind as the object of, or the subject of pleasure, the experiencer of pleasure, but rather you're aiming for something above the mind, like that. When you tell the truth, you're acting in sattva. When you see natural beauty, you're acting in sattva, or influenced by sattva. And when you eat fresh, nourishing foods, or enjoy harmonious environments, this is also sattva. Yet, as I said, even sattva can bind, can tie one up, because we become attached to peace, and we can become attached and proud of virtue. Rajas, on the by contrast, is the principle of motion, ambition, activity, desire, strong desire, restlessness and craving. So here's some characteristics, and you can see when this arises in yourself when there's rajas. When the rajas, they're in competition. When the rajas defeats the sattva, then these emotions will take over. The emotions are desire, anxiety, competition, emotional intensity, ambition, attachment to results, and constant activity. Now some of those you'll need occasionally, but you'll need rajas in short bursts. However, if you're attached to the pleasure that those short bursts give you, then you'll function a lot in rajas and you can't maintain that. It becomes difficult. Without that rajas, civilizations would not develop. We wouldn't get creativity. No one would invent anything. No one would paint anything, sing anything, play any musical instrument, or create anything worthwhile. Build a house. It all needs rajas. But there's a time for that to stop and for sattva to be used to rebalance. Because if you don't, excessive rajas produces agitation, dissatisfaction, and exhaustion. How do we know when a person is functioning in rajas too much? You get overwork, overstimulation, emotional drama, compulsive achievement, and a form of, constant busyness that they can never stop. So the rajasic person seeks happiness through gaining things, through success, through being recognized by other people as being successful, and sensory experience. And in the Bhagavad Gita, rajasic happiness is said to be nectar in the beginning and poison in the end. That's not good. Whereas by contrast, sattva is said to be poison in the beginning and nectar at the end. Tamas, tamaguna. Mode of ignorance, inertia, sleep. Tamas is anywhere where the principle is of heaviness, ignorance, resistance, and unconsciousness. So the characteristics that you would feel within yourself include lethargy. I want to do it, but I just can't. You ever feel like that? I know what I should be doing, but I just can't. Tamaguna. But it also leads to confusion, delusion, apathy. I'm not bothered. Meditation. Doing things for other people. No. Depression. One can become depressed with too much tamas. Resistance to change. So sometimes being able to change is a symptom of sattva. Or the other way, changing all the time can be rajas. But a resistance to any change at all, even in the face of good logic and argument and persuasion, this can be tama. Excessive sleep and mental dullness. Well, we're all like that at some point during the day, aren't we? We go to sleep and then we find it difficult to wake up. That's tamas. A good cold shower, everyone. That's what makes it. But without tamas, what would happen if we didn't have tamaguna at all? Well, you'd never get any sleep. You just can't sleep. Tamaguna won't come. I'm too much in rajas. I can't get into tamaguna. You have to get into tamaguna to sleep. Physical forms could not solidify. That's tamas. That's the influence of tamas. And matter, on a cosmic level, matter would possess no stability. But if it's excessive, tamas produces decay and ignorance. So what are the tendencies if you're influenced too much by tamas? Well, addiction is one. An inability to change when you've focused your mind on some pleasure, any pleasure. You can name your own pleasure. Name what it is you like, and if you can't budge from it, if you're addicted to it, that's your tamaguna. Another very common one here is tamaguna is when you can't bring yourself to do something. Procrastination, chronic avoidance of something that you should be doing, oversleeping, inertia. When you have stale or decomposing food, which we do sometimes, don't we? We don't reach out for the freshest things. And neglect of responsibility. So the tamasic state obscures our awareness and distances us from self-realization. So the gunas function on all of us. And when I say us, I mean all of us jivas. We could be the jiva in the form of an amoeba. We could be the jiva in the form of an antelope. We could be the jiva in the form of a leopard chasing the antelope. We could be the jiva in the form of Mr. Donald Trump. We could be the jiva in the form of King Charles. Any jiva anywhere is influenced by a combination of the modes of nature. And there's only two things really that the jiva that's covered by the modes of nature tries to do. One is called sankalpa, and the other is called vikalpa. Sankalpa means I want it, and vikalpa means I don't want it. And before that comes a series of questions. A series of questions from very small amoeba up to the President of the United States, or China, or any of these big countries. First question, will it eat me? Am I getting myself into a dangerous situation here? Will this person, country, lobby group, political party, will they eat me? Second question, can I eat them? It's just dog eat dog world, an amoeba eat amoeba world. How can we survive? Can I eat it? Will it eat me? Jiva jivasya jivanam. All the jivas are food for the other jivas. That's pretty basic stuff. But you can crank that up to any level of human society as well. You walk into a party, or you walk into any crowded room, and the perception is, will I be able to eat it? Can it eat me? Or should I fight it? Or should I run? Or can I mate with it? Definitely some people coming into a crowded room, they're thinking in that way. Can I mate with it? Can I mate with it today? Can I mate with it now? Well, this goes from not a single-celled amoeba, of course that's asexual reproduction, but anywhere where there's sexual reproduction, the question is, can I eat it? Will it eat me? Am I in danger? Can I mate with it? Will it mate? Will it want to mate with me? Animals organize themselves into flocks and herds and packs and colonies and tribes, and it's all governed by the modes of material nature. How the social consciousness develops, and the idea of emotional fulfillment being more than physical gratification. All of this is modal. And eventually the soul begins to understand. From the kingdom of, how does the song go? By Mangalananda, Sakiras will know this. From the kingdom of all creatures, you have risen, spirit soul. Don't turn back now. Hear the sages. It is time to meet the goal. Human life is a form in which we try to rise above the biological consciousness and achieve self-realization. We start seeking not temporary pleasure but enduring truth. So in the Vishnu Purana we have this beautiful verse, it goes like this: Jalajana Valakshani Stavara Lakshavimsati Krimayo Rudra Sankhya Kya Pakshinam Dashalakshanam Trimsha Lakshani Pashava Chatur Lakshani Manusha. There are 900,000 species living in water, 2 million form of plants and trees, 1,100,000 species of insects and reptiles, 1 million species of birds, 3 million quadrupeds, and 400,000 forms of human being. And when we talk about forms of human being, we talk about levels of consciousness. And we do have some different levels of consciousness. We have, on the one hand, we have realized sages, angels and gods, and at the very end we have people who are very unintelligent as to their spiritual nature and goal of life. And this is how we must, in Vedanta or Vedic philosophy or Upanishadic wisdom or yoga or Ayurveda, we have to understand that the way that we categorize human beings is not by the color of their skin, but the color of their consciousness. Human life gives us a unique opportunity of transcending the Gunas, and those who have tried to do it, even those who have tried, are better than those who have never tried. Those who have succeeded are glorious, and those who don't even know that they are conditioned, they're in the position where they are in need of mercy. So the Gunas also influence food. Food is in different modes. Music is in different modes. You will know, for instance, some music stimulates the lower chakras, some music stimulates the higher chakras. The modes come into our relationships with each other. Sometimes you have a relationship with someone and it's very much in the mode of passion. Sometimes it's just in Tamaguna. Sometimes it's in Sattva Guna. What's your relationship like? Even Sattva? Well, you will be some of the time. The idea is that at least some of the time be in Sattva, and some of the time you can't help being in Rajas. But try to avoid tamas if you can, and try to aim for Sattva and everything. Sattvic influences cultivate harmony and clarity. Things you will develop sattvic nature from fresh fruits and vegetables, whole grains, clean environments, tidy environments, living in moderation, expressing gratitude, cultivating gratitude for what you have and for those around you, meditation, contemplation, always telling the truth, spending time in nature, and of course devotional practice. If you want to be in Rajas, I don't know why you would want it, but if you want to stimulate yourself, highly spicy foods, overstimulation, excessive competition, irregular schedules, an ambition-driven lifestyle, constant sensory input, and emotional intensity. There you go. And tamasic influences, stale or decomposing food, like fermented food that's older than 6 hours or a day or something like that. Inactivity, clutter, oversleep, intoxication. Isolation is another one, just living in a situation where it's just you and your mind. This can also lead to anxiety, depression. You need social life. You need social life. So many people live a life that's cut off from everything, don't they? This can lead to tamaguna and chronic avoidance. I want to do it, I know I should do it, but I just can't. So the goal here is not complete elimination of rajas and tamas, but because all three gunas are necessary, but we must aim for being dominated by sattva as much as possible. That helps us. So in Ayurveda is of course, Ayurveda is the science of long life. Ayur means long life. Veda means wisdom or knowledge. So Ayurveda is the science of the knowledge of how to have a long life. So a long life means a sustainable life. It means something in the mode of sattva as much as you can. So in Ayurveda we have a different language. We have not just the modes of nature, but the words vata, pitta and kapha. And they describe physiological constitutions. They don't quite match up, but Ayurveda generally seeks to cultivate sattva because a clear and balanced mind supports physical well-being and spiritual well-being. As you are what you eat, and what you eat will govern how you think. What you think will govern how sensitive you are to your spiritual nature. So the voice of Tamaguna is, when the alarm clock goes off, the voice of Tamaguna says, stay in bed, hit the snooze button. The voice of Rajaguna says, hurry up, get out, achieve, compete with the others. Sattvaguna says, yes, get out of bed, but begin your day consciously, with purpose and peacefully. So human life, advanced human life, consists of trying to steer very nicely between these interaction of these different forces. And of course the best way to do that is with something called yoga. And classical yoga philosophy views the mind as part of prakriti or matter. It is not gross matter like wood or stone or iron, but matter nonetheless. It's a subtle matter. Mind is an element. Therefore it's prakriti. Therefore it's always being influenced by the modes. We think, I am thinking this. But what we're really doing is that the jiva is observing a thought. And the thoughts that come to us are like a conveyor belt of things produced by the modes of material nature. If you choose to identify with those thoughts, then that becomes the problem, because you'll be pulled by any one of those thoughts. So the purpose of yoga is to view those thoughts and not identify with them, to try to reduce tamaguna, especially when the tamaguna arises in a particular thought, to cultivate sattva. But then yoga means to transcend all three of those. And in classical yoga, of course, tamas is you try to overcome it by through movement, through pranayama, through breath, and through disciplined routines, through living in a situation which is very much in sattva guna, like a forest or a mountain, where there's less human disturbance. The rajasic modes produce mental turbulence, and they manifest as racing thoughts or ambition, attachment to achievement, fear of missing out, anxiety, like that, compulsive activity. So yoga refines the rajas by mindfulness and slower practices through breath regulation and through cultivating non-attachment, this asteya, not stealing anything, or non-attachment, trying to look within rather than out. And cultivating sattva. Sattvic mind becomes stable and reaches an equilibrium. There's no cultivation of intense desire for something. We become compassionate, and we become joyful without craving. So in order to cultivate that, you practice truthfulness and non-violence, simplicity, study of wisdom texts, swadhyaya, and devotion, Ishvara Pranidhana. This is in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. So this is what you do to cultivate, but at the same time you want to rise above And that's called being transcendental. Transcendental to what? It means above the modes itself. So liberation can only come when consciousness realizes itself as being distinct from all mental states. Sometimes we say, I know I'm not my body, I've understood that. But we don't know, I'm not my mind. We have to rise above both. I am my body and I am my mind. I am these thoughts. And that's yoga means to rise above that. It's called Gunatita, or beyond the gunas. So, to rise above it means to identify only with one's spiritual nature. So, let's just tell you a little bit about what the Bhagavad Gita says again, so we can understand what Krishna has to say about how the modes affect us. And if we know, then we'll be able to label different thoughts that come, different activities that we have. Is that all right? Got a couple of minutes here. So understanding in the mode of goodness, we can distinguish between what is to be done and what's not to be done. What to worry about and what to not worry about. In the mode of passion, we can't distinguish between what's to be done or not done. And most importantly, we can't understand the difference between what is religion and what's irreligion. So many times people, the supposedly religious people, supposedly even spiritual people, when they do bad things, it's the mode of passion that causes a person to become polluted and to fail to understand that what I'm doing now, what I'm saying now, is not really religion. It's not true religion. It's false religion. It's not yoga. In ignorance, that becomes even more pronounced. In ignorance, we consider religion to be irreligion. I don't do what you do. I'm a religious person. I would never visit a temple. I'd never bow down to a statue. I'm a really religious person. Why would I do that? And people think that what's irreligious is religious. You think of your own examples. So such people have an understanding in the mode of ignorance, and they're always striving in the wrong direction. Similarly, determination and happiness. Happiness is a good one. So Krishna says, happiness in the mode of goodness is poison at first, and nectar in the end. So it's poison for me to give away what I have. If I have some bananas and I give them to you, that's poison. I was hoping to eat those bananas. But that gift of bananas, that compassionate reaching out to you because I know that you're hungry, it's poison to my belly at first, but sometime later it will turn into nectar because I know that I've done something good and I'll be rewarded in another way. So in passion is the other side. It's derived from, a sense of happiness is derived from contact of the senses with the sense objects. So that's nectar in the beginning and poison at the end. We see men and women who have lived their life in so-called enjoyment, whatever it is. Alcohol is wonderful, ha-ha, he-he, having such a great time drinking. And at the end, I'm sitting in the hospital, lying in the hospital, with my liver destroyed. So it's nectar in the beginning and poison at the end. What else is interesting? Well, you'll see these all in the Bhagavad Gita. Two more. The qualities of a person in the mode of sattva guna. Peacefulness, self-control, austerity, means you're able to do the things which are difficult for you to do, but which are good for you to do. Austerity, purity, as you becoming free from the polluting influence of the modes of nature. You're developing tolerance, that's a great one. Forgiveness. Forgiveness is such a powerful tool. If you can wield it, it's better than any weapon at all. I forgive you. And to say that with joy in your heart, that's not easy. This is the quality of a person in Sattva Guna. And let such a person develops true wisdom. And that person we call a Brahmana. Brahmana isn't a sort of social code or civil code or a ranking in some sort of social hierarchy thousands of years ago. Brahman means one who's cultivated Sattva Guna in his or her life. That's a Brahman. Rajaguna. Rajaguna. Heroism. I won a medal in the war. Hero. Power. Determination. Resourceful. Generous. Good leader. We need such people. So human society would not work unless we had those people. But they're known as Kshatriyas and Vaishyas. And someone in Tamaguna, they may not have those qualities, but they have a tendency to offer labor and service to others. Again, that's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. But that's their exclusive preserve. And therefore, such a person who is a Sudra should not attempt immediately to take up the position of a Brahmin or the position of an executive leader. So then, what are the results? Finally, this is my final point because we've gone over. In Sattva Guna, we have a person who is being illuminated, free from from performing bad activities, bad karma, free from the tendency to perform bad karma. Person is situated in knowledge and happiness, and their rebirth, their reincarnation. They do reincarnate. People in the mode of goodness, predominantly influenced by the mode of goodness, they do reincarnate. Where do they go? They go to the higher planes, the higher realms of the sages and the gods. Person in the mode of passion, predominantly, has unlimited desires and longings. You never satisfy them. I always want more. Very successful person, but I still have a few more properties that I would like, a few more land that I would like. One more election cycle, one more medal, one more. I'd like to be known for this. And rebirth, they're reborn on earth to hopefully at some stage extinguish these unlimited desires. They'll never be satisfied. The results of living predominantly influenced by the mode of ignorance is delusion, madness. This is very difficult, isn't it? People are always living in the mode of ignorance. We do see some people, many people, predominantly influenced by tamaguna. They resort to a completely unrealistic perception of reality. They can't help it. And unless they begin to talk to people that aren't there, or not talk to people that are there, they create a fantasy world in which they have enemies that are not really enemies, friends that are not really friends. This leads to permanent madness, indolence, can't do anything, can't look after themselves, even can't clean up. I went to a young man's house because he was interested in Bhagavad Gita. I'd received a letter. I used to go to people's homes, and his home was just, it was like a rubbish bin inside the house. The whole floor was coated in matchsticks and old cigarette packets and old pizza boxes and plates of this and that, and just cans of this and that. The whole floor you hadn't cleaned up for ages. And people do live like this. And sleep. People sleep it off. They just sleep their life. And rebirth for them is an animal birth, or even if in the mode of tamas they have committed sinful activities against others, they've punished others or given others pain, they'll have to have a period in a hellish plane in order to have some good lessons. So in all of this, why do we focus on this? Because we're listing conditions so that we can know, yes, I must not be affected by this, I must move away from that, or I must use the good component of that to work forward, but at the same time not become conditioned by it. This way we can zig and zag our way through and ultimately come to a point where we can transcend all influences. All right, thank you very much. I'll send you the notes. Hare Krishna.